welcome to the world of Alana Loves Books. I am Alana and thank you for joining me today in my video. Today I'm going to be talking about the novel No Hard Feelings by Genevieve Novak. I've actually had this novel sitting on my shelf for over a year now, and I finally was prompted to pick it up when my book club chose this book as the bump, and I am so glad that I did. So considering this will be my first review video, I'll just go over the structure. So basically I'll start off with a synopsis, a non-spoilery review, and then a more spoilery review with some of my thoughts about the characters and their characterization, and then I will give the rating at the end. So, No Hard Feelings follows the story of Penny Moore, a 26-come-27-year-old Melburnian woman whose life isn't quite going to plan. She's stuck in a job that she hates, she's still in love with her ex-boyfriend, and her two best friends are leaving her in the dust as their relationships and careers reach new levels. In the book, we follow Penny as she makes questionable decisions, as she experiences new highs and new lows, and as she learns how to become a better person. Now, I have to say that this is the first book in a long time that I have finished within 2 days. I know that's not very quick for some, but for me, I am really proud of myself. I haven't done that in years. I know many of you probably finish books within a day or maybe even a couple of hours, and if you do, I'm so jealous because I wish I could do that. But unfortunately, since I started working full time, it's been really difficult to juggle work, relationships, friendships, exercise, family, cooking, cleaning, and hobbies, and you get the picture. I'm sure you've all experienced it yourself. So the fact that I finished this in 2 days is such an incredible feat, and it says a lot of good things about this book. So, time for the non-spoilery review. So, as you can tell, I loved this book. I absolutely devoured it. It was funny, it was relatable, it was relevant, it was witty, and I just had such a great time reading it. I couldn't put it down. The story is told from Penny's first-person point of view, and she is the same age as myself, and she's a very flawed character. There were a few times in the book where I actually felt quite frustrated with some of her behaviour and actions, and I will go into those in a little bit more detail a bit later on in the video. But at the same time, she was also hilarious, self-deprecating, vulnerable, and so innately human. And I think that's what made this book resonate with me so much, is because I could see so much of myself in this novel. The book deals with themes of maturity, change, and self-belief. As the novel progresses, Penny vacillates between acting her age and also acting rather immaturely, and she also learns to deal with how to accept change rather than reject it, and she also learns how to believe in herself, even if it is kind of like 1 step forward, 2 steps back for her. The scenarios that Penny finds herself in are, I'm sure, incredibly familiar to a lot of 20-something-year-old women around the world. Not so much the work fiascos that she faces, but definitely the situation she finds herself in with her relationships and her friendships. And I think that being able to read from her point of view and to be able to get inside her mind as she navigates her emotions and her connections to people, I think, although I can't speak for everybody, but it feels like the inside of my mind, and it feels like definitely some of the things that I have experienced throughout my 20s, and so it really resonated with me in that regard. Now, Penny has many people around her who she can use as her support network. She's got her best friend Annie, who is a lawyer, her best friend Beck, whose relationship is reaching new levels, her dad, who she probably doesn't speak to as often as she should, and her housemate Leo, who is just a real stand-up guy. We stan Leo. However, she spends most of her time running around her ex-boyfriend Max, who, frankly, doesn't care as much as he should about her. It was with these relationships where I was the most frustrated with Penny, and you might be surprised to find out which relationship I was the most frustrated about, and I will go into that in a little more detail in a moment. But in saying that, I think it really is important for a lot of these certain conflicts to occur, and in order for her to grow as a character, the story wouldn't have progressed, and the message of self-belief and learning how to accept change and how to mature wouldn't necessarily have been as importantly conveyed or effectively conveyed in this novel if she didn't experience those things. It is these relationships that help her to mature, that help her to accept change. And I will say, probably maybe one friendship or relationship she has is what helps her to believe in herself, and I'll go into that later. So overall, I really enjoyed this book, and if you're a 20-something-year-old who's feeling a little bit lost and maybe needs a little bit of guidance, I would definitely recommend reading this book, because even though Penny isn't necessarily the best person to guide you, I think you can definitely relate to her. Even if you are somebody who isn't lost and you're quite content with your life, I would still highly recommend this book, because it's very funny, it's very witty, and I just had an amazing time reading it. So if you would like to see what I rated the book without getting spoiled, click on the timestamp here and it will take you straight to there, and I will hopefully see you at the end of this video. Now let's jump into the spoiler review.
Hi everybody, this is future Alana here. I just wanted to quickly preface that this next section talks about Penny's behavior as a result of her mental health. While I don't really delve into how she deals with her depression and her mental health problems, I just want it to be known that a lot of the things that she does are a result of her depression, and perhaps she is not consciously aware that she is doing these things because she hasn't properly sought the help yet for that, which she does later on in the book, and it's amazing to see that change in her. But she does act kind of abrasively and sometimes without much thought, because she's dealing with a lot of mental health problems, and I just think that's important to note before going into this section. And if you're somebody who perhaps is dealing with having a tough time, you can find some appropriate links below to help you, and I hope you're doing okay. Thanks guys.
Okay, I'm assuming right now that everybody who is still here has either read the book or you just enjoyed my first part of the video so much that you want to stay. And if so, thank you. So either way, let's get stuck into it. So as we know, I really loved this book. I enjoyed reading about a girl who was my age, and especially a girl who's from Australia, because obviously I am Australian myself, and it's really nice to be able to read about characters who have had a similar background, a similar upbringing, and have similar references to what I would have in Australia. I wrote a lot of notes on my phone, but I thought it might be easiest for me to go through these in order of the chapters in which I wrote them. So not every chapter has a note, it's just kind of my little thoughts as I'm reading the book. So I'm just going to go through them in chronological order. Okay, so chapter 1, Max is an a-hole. Massive a-hole. And I know he is deliberately characterized that way. I mean, what man can say to you right after doing the naughty, are you gonna get an Uber home or walk? Like, first off, rude. Secondly, at least offer to pay for her Uber. Like, you can't have a girl over and then send her home and pay for it herself. Like, come on dude, she's already made the effort to come out and see you. Be a bit kind. Be a bit generous, splash the cash. You are so lucky to have been able to share a bed with her. You should pay for her Uber home if you want her gone. And then thirdly, are you gonna walk? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. What man in his right mind will ever say to a girl that she should walk home alone at night time? Do you know the things that can happen to women at night? And I hate that. I don't think it's right, but it's a fact of life. Like, oh. So, safe to say I hated him. And Genevieve Novak did a great job of setting up his character as somebody to be despised. But girl, Penny, you gotta stop chasing after him. And she does it for most of the book. Anyway, we'll leave that there. That is the last line of chapter 1 anyway. Chapter 2, we are introduced to the housemate, Leo, who she meets at a party at Beck's house, and he randomly invites her over to live with him. And Leo sounds like a wonderful fella, and basically as soon as he was introduced, I knew they were going to end up together, and they did. And this is how I knew. Firstly, I've read a lot of romance novels, and I think it's always quite easy to tell, in not all, but in some, you're gonna get a hint at which one's going to be the guy that she ends up with, if she does end up with them. That doesn't always happen. It's kind of refreshing when it doesn't, but I do like it when they do. So one of the giveaways for me was the fact that the author managed to talk about Leo in such a detached sort of way. You know, Leo was just some guy that she met at some party. He invited her to live with him. She rarely ever saw him. The most they ever texted was when they had to decide upon who was going to pay the gas bill. And it wasn't until recently that she thinks, she's not sure, but she thinks he broke up with his girlfriend because he'd been around the house more often. Now to me, that just screams final love interest. Because one, I feel like the detached characterization of that particular character is a ploy to distract us. We don't know a whole lot about them, and they're spoken about in such a casual way that they don't really want us to think about them anymore. But aha, to me, I know that means something big's gonna happen. It's a red herring of sorts. So that gave it away for me. And two, he was the only other guy that had been mentioned. And he's got a name like Leo. Like, come on, that's so cute. Leo. Oh. Alright. Whew. Chapter 4. I wrote a few notes for this chapter. This is where I started to have some frustrations, I guess, with Penny's behaviour. And obviously, I just want to preface this by saying I know that these things had to happen in order for her character to develop and experience growth, but I was still frustrated all the same, especially by the way that she was treating her friend who she called her part of her two favourite people in the world. So in chapter 4, Beck texts Annie and Penny and says to them, you know, can we have dinner? I've got important news. They all go out for dinner. Beck announced that she's engaged to her boyfriend of 18 months, Evan, and we discover that Penny and Annie aren't that excited for her, which is really heartbreaking to say the least. Annie replies when she finds out about the engagement that yours and Beck is too young, she's only 26 and she's still on her parents' mobile plan. Penny says nothing aside from the fact that she didn't know how Beck didn't vomit when she saw the ring and how could she have said yes, and that time has stopped for her. Now look, I understand, like, learning that a friend is engaged, it can be quite difficult to cope with. I mean, especially if it's somebody that you've been so close with for a long time, as it tends to happen when people get into relationships, they don't need the same things from their friends as they once did, because they get that from their partner. And that can be really hard for people to cope with. I totally understand that. But at the same time, not being happy for your friend, saying awful things about the ring, and I will admit I might be a little bit personally offended because I do like yellow gold and I don't mind a pear-shaped ring, but hearing that, I felt for Beck. I really did. To go up to the two people in the world that you consider your closest friends and for them to not experience the same excitement as you, when clearly it's something you are excited about, must be so hard. And I really didn't appreciate the way that the girls, Annie and Penny, responded in this case. And look, if Evan was a guy who, you know, was abusive or had messed Beck around or was really rude or didn't respect the friends, totally, I'd understand, I'd get it. We want to get rid of that guy. You'd want to have a sit-down conversation with your friend and talk to them and tell them, you know, I don't know if you should be with this person and these are the reasons why, to show them that you care about them. But Penny states in the novel that she'd only met him a couple of times and he seemed nice. And then later on she says all he talks about is the stock market. Okay, sure, boring, but not grounds to break up with someone. So I guess I was a little bit frustrated with her character here, and with Annie as well, for not being the supportive friends that they should be. And I don't think they're necessarily great role models for anybody in this case on friendship. My frustrations with Penny and this friendship continued on for a lot of the novel. It continued in chapter 7 when everybody goes over to Annie's house to help her build furniture because she's bought a new place. And Penny states in her inner dialogue that I kind of wish Beck had just ditched us for a sedate Friday night with Evan like usual. And that, oh man, that's so rough. Because we know that Beck is bringing Evan there so he can get to know her friends, because she recognizes that they don't have that close a friendship. So she's trying to rectify that, and Penny won't even try, which really frustrated me. In chapter 12 as well, when Annie and Penny were bitching about Beck and her wedding plans at the Women in Brunch conference, I also found it quite ironic when she mentions in chapter 14 that her friends won't give Max a chance when they finally make things official, if you can even call it that. And I find that ironic because, well, Max, she dated in the past, he's been leading her on for over a year, he's clearly not that interested in her, he's clearly not really boyfriend material for Penny. She deserves someone way better, and her friends know that. They've met him. Yet when it comes to Evan, who doesn't seem to have done anything wrong by Beck, not from what we've heard, or to the friends for that matter, she won't even give him a chance. Like in one of the later chapters when they're all going out for dinner and then Beck asks if she can bring Evan along, Annie says that she's no longer able to make it because she has to work, and instead of going to join the two of them to get to know them, Penny says she cancels. And look, I understand, maybe she didn't want to be a third wheel. That's annoying, but sometimes get to know your friend's partner, you might like them. I don't know, maybe I'm biased, but that whole storyline did frustrate me, and even when they had their argument and made up, I felt like there was a lot of stuff that hadn't really been discussed. And it could have been cleared up a little bit more. In terms of her relationships, obviously I don't like Max, but I understand it's really hard to extricate yourself from something that you're so deep within, and especially when you don't feel like you deserve anything better, which, as we know, she uncovers with her psychologist. But the way she treated Leo, oh, poor Leo, poor Leo, such a beautiful man. So as we know, he takes her out for her birthday after Max stood her up on her birthday. Disgusting. He takes her out for a lovely dinner, they go back to their place and they kiss. And then Leo admits that he's been in love with her this entire time. And to my frustration, because I felt like this was a bit of an immature response, maybe I'm alone in thinking that, I don't know, comment below if you disagree with me. But the way that she reacted to that was to tell him, F you, find somebody else's life to ruin. And the reason she said that was because she has seen Leo bring home women and sleep with them after he's broken up with his ex-girlfriend, and she doesn't think that he can be trusted. She thinks that he is a F-boy. But she doesn't give him the chance to show her that he's not. She doesn't even ask him what he wants. And then she runs away and doesn't talk to him for 2 or 3 weeks as she stays with her dad, which, by the way, I'm glad she went to see her dad, but I wish she was a little bit more transparent with those people who care about her so she wouldn't worry people. And when she does come back, she says to Leo she wants to be friends, and he sucks it up for a little while and then decides he can't do this, and it was just really frustrating. It was like sitting there watching one of your friends just dig themselves into a grave, and you know that they're making the wrong decisions but you can't say anything about it. It was a bit like that. I guess I felt like Penny was my friend, which is good writing, I guess. But yeah, eventually they finally make up and they kiss on the train platform, and it's raining and it's beautiful, and I was so happy then because I've been waiting for it for so long. And I guess, you know, going through all that drama is what makes the ending so much sweeter. And though I was really frustrated with the way Penny handled it, I'm glad that she got with Leo in the end, because, oh, he's just such a beautiful human. Such a beautiful human. If he were real. Maybe there are Leos out there. In terms of the theme of self-belief, I felt like this is something that Penny really dealt with a lot in terms of her work. So as we know, she hated the job that she was in. She didn't like working for Scout. Her boss Margot was nasty, and she really struggles to find her confidence until she gets the pitch for Evergreen skincare. And she meets that lovely lady, Patra De Silva, who helps her build her confidence. Even though she didn't get the Evergreen skincare job, I was really nervous for her before she had that pitch. I could see how much effort she put into it and how excited she was, and I really, really wanted her to do well. I was so nervous that something would go wrong. And I was so glad when the pitch went well and when she was feeling good about herself. Reading her say, you know, she's the best person at her job, that she loved what she was doing, it was just so refreshing, and I felt so happy for her character. And I was really heartbroken when she lost her job, but I had a sneaking suspicion that something might pop up with Evergreen Skincare, especially when they said they were going to go in-house rather than take on her pitch. And I'm glad that it did end up that way. I'm really glad that it did. I didn't really have a lot of thoughts about the whole work storyline. I more just found it entertaining. Not that I found her misery entertaining, but the interactions and the way that the drama that happened, I think there was some really well constructed characters there. I guess my last bit to talk about is at one point in the novel, I guess a few ways through the novel, obviously Penny is not confident in herself and she doesn't believe that she is capable of love. And that's something that we see recurring throughout the whole novel. It's why she goes back to Max, it's why she pushes away Leo, and it's why she's so jealous of her friend Beck and her partner. One thing I guess I didn't like, or perhaps this is in here deliberately to show how she's not capable of believing in herself, is the kind of pick-me attitude that she had. On page 215, after she has left Leo from their kiss, she says, "I'm sure the moment I left on Saturday night," which is the night they kissed, "he was back on Tinder looking for some blondish, active-wearing, iced latte slurping, Mimco bag-toting real estate agent to keep the other side of his bed warm. I'm sure he was successful too. The idea of yet another beige, personality-less woman in my house makes me prickle with anger. Whoever she has probably been dipping into my Sephora loot in the bathroom before she tiptoes out in the morning." Now, obviously this is just a reflection of her character and the deep, deep trouble she's going through. But I did find it to be slightly frustrating that we had to put down other women in order to make Penny feel somewhat better. It was very much a pick-me attitude. I'm not like other girls, I'm not blonde, I don't have Mimco bag, I'm not as vacuous and vain as those women are. I mean, what's the problem if a woman wants to do that? I don't see a problem. And that's not really rectified in here. I do think it's meant to be a byproduct of the way she puts herself down. She compares herself to other women by talking about the things that they have that she doesn't, and then she tries to put them down to make herself feel somewhat better. I mean, I could be wrong. Comment below if you have any thoughts about that, but I do think that perhaps it could have been done in a different way, in a way that wouldn't make her seem too pick me, for lack of a better word. But overall, despite those many thoughts I have, I did really enjoy the book. I enjoyed the journey that Penny went on, even though I did feel frustrated with her at times. I enjoyed how she grew from the beginning to the end of the novel, and even though that growth wasn't necessarily linear, she had quite a few hiccups along the way. I did feel like I was traveling with a friend. At parts I felt like I was reading about my own experiences, and it was a very cleverly crafted, well written and funny novel to read. And if I could read it again for the first time, I absolutely would. I really would. It's definitely one of the books I've enjoyed the most recently. And I feel like it could be almost like a bit of a Bible to girls who perhaps need help finding their way in their 20s, because 20s are hard, really hard. And you know, I feel like a lot of us can relate to Penny in this novel. So like I said before, if you are somebody who you're in your 20s, or perhaps you just want to revisit your 20s, or you want to just sit and enjoy a good book, I highly, highly, highly recommend this. I really enjoyed it. And Penny, even though she can be frustrating, she is very lovable, she's very funny, she's very flawed, and I think that's the best part of the book, is that she is human, because none of us are perfect, we all make mistakes, and it's great to be able to be presented with a character, with a protagonist who is just so who is just like us, an incredibly flawed human. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Oh, I gotta do my rating. So overall, I love this book a lot. I rated it 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to follow me, I have put my Instagram up below, alannahlovesbooks, and my Goodreads as well. So feel free to follow me or add me on there. I would really like to be able to get to see who some of you guys are. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!